you very much, Mr. Chair. I'll start with you, Mr. Massad. You talked about the CFTC having a role and a clear one with regulating digital assets. And then you also talked about how you and the former Trump chair have suggested doing something where the SEC does some of it and the CFTC does some of it. Mr. Sexton raised this issue that he's concerned, I don't want to put words in your mouth, right? But that there would be vagary or two, that are regulating the same thing. Could you talk about how you think this could work in today's environment in terms of making those kinds of suggestions or including that in legislation? Because I found that interesting.
Certainly. The first thing is that Mr. Clayton and I were suggesting that if we were trying to establish jurisdiction over this spot market without rewriting securities laws, without rewriting the definition of security, that's why we argued for joint rules. Secondly, this is a different market, and I think we have to recognize that. It's much more retail than what the CFTC has regulated in the past. And I have great respect for the agency's abilities and expertise, but we need to keep that in mind. We also need to keep in mind that this will be an exception, a very big exception, in that the CFTC does not regulate other spot markets, and we don't want that exception to grow. I wouldn't want to see other constituencies come and say, well, why shouldn't the CFTC regulate this spot market? And finally, it's an unusual technology in that you are going to have things that start out as securities and then become commodities. That's the reason why they have to work together. So how would it work? It would involve some joint rulemaking. It would certainly involve one of the agencies taking the lead, and I think in terms of implementing rules, enforcing rules, that could certainly be the CFTC with respect to this digital commodity spot market. I think it should also involve an SRO, a self-regulatory organization. I have great respect for the work of the NFA. I think that could be jointly supervised, as the Lummis-Gillibrand proposal advocated. So I think it would be a combination of joint rulemaking, perhaps a joint SRO. You could even have common commissioners, and I realize that would be a big step. I haven't advocated merger. I'm not advocating merger. But I think this is an unusual situation that we're in, and this is a technology that is going to have multiple uses, and it's necessary that we approach it in a way that we have consistency across the board.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Benham, Mr. Massad just talked about that concern on the retail and how uniquely retail this is in terms of all the people that have purchased this and it's part of their savings. What specific approaches would you recommend to ensure that innovation in crypto does not come at the expense of basic safeguards and customer protections for the public? Would there be specific marketing, disclosure rules? What would you see?
Thanks, Senator. I think it's important to note, and I've said this many times, probably before the committee, yes, in fact, Chairman Massad, I agree with him. A lot of the market is retail-oriented, unlike the typical CFTC market, which is more institutionally oriented. But we have to look really at the asset itself as opposed to the constituency that's investing. Commodities versus securities are regulated in very different ways. Securities are regulated in a way to bridge information gaps between an issuer of security and an investor, because you have centralized individuals and audited financial statements that need to be disclosed to investors. That is not the case with commodities. So I don't think you're going to need to build, and quite frankly, I don't think you can build an investor disclosure regime at the CFTC like you have one at the SEC, because you can't simply disclose something about Bitcoin that you can about a share of a stock. Second, I advocated this, I said this in my written testimony, yes, the CFTC will absolutely need to increase its ability to get information out about the risk of loss associated with investing in digital assets. The CFTC has a very well built out customer education program, but I believe the committee should think about investing in that program to further develop
Thank you. And I'll get more from you personally, so thank you for your ideas. Just one last question, Mr. Massad. In considering any legislation to regulate these digital markets, we can't ignore the numerous ways that President Trump has sought to profit from digital assets and influence. His Trump meme coin offers a non-transparent backdoor for those seeking presidential favors or attention, including the recent crypto dinner he sponsored. That put money directly in his pocket. His World Liberty Financial issued stablecoin, USD1, only recently entered the market, but it has already skyrocketed to be one of the top 5 stablecoins. What effect do these activities have on the crypto industry and on efforts to regulate it? And as you and I seem to agree in my opening and your comments, that this has to be part of any regulation.
I think it's a black eye for the industry, and I know a number of people in the industry that have expressed that but are afraid to speak out. And I think it gives the wrong impression of what this sector is about, and that's why it's so important to address it through rules on conflicts, divestment, and so forth. And I hope also I can come back on the disclosure point later.
Okay, well, I'm sure I'll have a second round, or someone else.
Thank you.
One of my colleagues will ask you. Thank you.
Thank you.